Welcome to this video. In this session, we talk about documentary collections, DA, documents against acceptance. A documentary collection is a mechanism where banks act as intermediaries to facilitate exchange of documents against payment. And in a DA collection, the payment is deferred to a future date, that is 30 days from shipment, 60 days from receipt of documents, or 90 days from arrival of goods, etc. So the arrangement is between the buyer and seller to have a deferred payment, and documents against acceptance says that once the buyer accepts to pay, the documents will be released to them. The shipping documents are released before the payment is made, but immediately after accepted to pay. This lesson or this video tries to explore the definition, features, process flow, roles of the parties, the various risks and its mitigates, and some real life examples. We will also have a look at avalization or co-acceptance. Understanding documentary collections, DA, documents against acceptance. Documents against acceptance is an arrangement where the exporter's bank, the remitting bank, forwards the shipping documents to importer's bank, the collecting bank. The documents are released to the importer upon their acceptance of a draft or a bill of exchange or undertaking letter that the payment is deferred to a future date and they will make payment on the agreed maturity date. So the documents are released upon acceptance by the importer to pay on a deferred date. These collections are governed by Uniform Rules for Collection 522, and the main difference compared to DA is that in DTP documents are released against payment, in DA documents are released against acceptance to pay on a future date. Documentary collections serve as an intermediate solution between open account trading and letters of credit. These are less costly than letters of credit, more flexible than letters of credit, but compared to OA, they are more complex and more costly. They provide security because banks are involved and they will exchange the documents against acceptance, but there is no guarantee of payment and the costs are lesser than a letter of credit. Let us look at some of the characteristics, features and benefits. The feature is that the payment is deferred. Payment is made on a future date specified in the bill of exchange or an undertaking letter, and it will provide that the importer will have an option to not to pay but to enjoy the goods for some time. The role of the bank is, banks act as intermediaries, remitting bank or a collecting bank. They will ensure safe transfer of the documents and they will collect the payment. Banks do not guarantee payment in a normal course. They do not verify authenticity of the goods. They will only do a cursory check of the documents. It is more cost effective compared to LC because the fees are lesser but more costly than an open account because banks are involved. It is suitable for low risk transactions. Regarding control over goods, exporters retain control over goods. They retain control over the shipping documents. They have authorized to release the documents only against acceptance to pay on a deferred date. So the main thing is that there is no guarantee for the payment. It is entirely dependent on importer's creditworthiness, that is willingness to accept to pay and to pay on the future date. It is dependent on their liquidity, importer's liquidity, and it is independent of the underlying contract. Documentary collection process operates independently of the underlying contract. If the documents are standard and uniform, this can be easily used. Documentary collection or documents against acceptance can be used as an effective method. What are the benefits to the various parties? For the exporter, it provides assurance that the importer is committed to pay by accepting the draft or an undertaking. And for the exporter, there is a control over the documents or goods or the transaction because banks are involved. For the importer, it allows deferred payment. It allows some buyer's credit time. It allows some time to ensure the goods are sold and cash is collected and working capital is not stressed. For the importer, it also avoids high cost vis-a-vis the letter of credit mechanism. It facilitates easy trade in an established relationship because parties benefit from simplicity. The documents against acceptance mechanism balances security and flexibility. So parties are finding it cost effective financing solution. When and where we will use this? Because when you have a need to balance the deferred payment and the security, then this can be used, and then this can be used when it is a cost effective solution compared to open account and letter of credits. It's ideal for scenario where the importer needs a short-term finance, where the political and economic condition of the importing country is satisfactory, and the industries have a standard documentation. The strategic advantage is that it provides partial protection and it facilitates smooth cash flow. There is a limited recourse to the importer if they default on payment, because the fallback should be the underlying contract and not the documentary correction mechanism. So it is suitable for medium risk industries, and there has to be thorough due diligence on the trading partners, especially on the importer's ability to pay at a future date. So the communication between the parties has to be clear. There should be an understanding between them. What is the process flow? As usual, the buyer places an order, the exporter arranges for the goods, ships the goods, prepares the documents, submits the documents to the remitting bank. The remitting bank sends the documents to the collecting bank. Collecting bank notifies the importer. Importer agrees to pay and collects the documents. Importer sells the goods, collects the money. Importer pays on due date. Collecting bank remits the money to the remitting bank on due date. Remitting bank settles the exporter on the due date. This is the process flow. So once the time draft is accepted or an undertaking letter is issued, then people wait and watch for the importer to settle. There is no guarantee importer will pay. So the creditworthiness of the importer is very much important, as well as the changes in the political and economic conditions of the importer's country is very much important to ensure there is payment at maturity to the exporter. The alternative fallback or a legal remedy is that the bill of exchange or a draft that is accepted by the importer and is being held by the collecting bank can be used as an actionable claim against the importer in case payment is not made on date. So depending on the shipping time, depending on the document processing time, depending on the credit period allowed, the exporter will have to wait for getting his payment, and not like DP, he will get immediate realization of his proceeds. Let us now look at the roles and rights or responsibilities or duties of the various parties. Now, as an exporter or a seller, their role is to prepare the goods as per the underlying contract, documents as required for the collection, and submit them in a non-discriminant fashion to the bank. Because these documents should be permitting the importer to release the goods from the port on the importing country. So the documents has to be standard, complete and correct. The banks will do only cursory check of the documents, not a thorough UCP check, because this is documentary correction. The rights of the exporter is especially coming in the form of retaining control over the documents, that is the goods, until the importer accepts to pay. The banks act as intermediaries only. Bank will arrange for forwarding the documents. Bank will arrange for notifying the party. Bank will arrange for collecting the payment. They charge fees for the same. The duty of the bank is to follow the principal's instruction, that is the exporter. Banks will ensure documents are handled securely and payments are securely handled. The collecting bank has a duty to hold the documents until the importer accepts, but no duty to ensure payment. They will remit the payment if and only if the importer pays on due date. They will also charge a fee for acting as collecting bank. The duty of the collecting bank will also be to ensure that the acceptance is proper and the documents presented are complete and correct and properly handed over to the importer. Looking at the various risks and mitigations, we will have to remember that each party plays a specific role as per the URC, Uniform Rules for Correction. The success of the transaction depends on the parties fulfilling their responsibilities. That means importer paying on the due date and honoring their acceptance. The risk for the exporter is a non-payment risk or a political and economic risk or a documentation error risk. For the importer, it is quality risk or logistical delays. So, how can it be mitigated? The payment risk can be mitigated by credit check on the importer or asking for an avalization or export credit insurance. Political risk against ECA or a market research. Documentation risk, standard uniform documents, expert review of the documents or the underlying contractual requirements. Transport risk is to ensure the right Incoterm, ensure cargo insurance and ship on time. Understanding the risk and managing these risks is to very much important for the exporter to ensure payment on due date. Due diligence on the parties before the contract is signed is the number one requirement. Looking at avalization or co-acceptance. This refers to a process where there is a bank or a financial institution that guarantees the payment of the draft or a bill of exchange accepted by the importer. The bank will add their signature or endorsement to the document. That is why it is called co-acceptance or pour aval, for and on behalf of. So this provides additional security for the exporter because the bank is taking liability to payment, which means payment on due date is guaranteed irrespective of the liquidity of the importer. So this is adding an additional layer to the DA correction, and it is making as good as a letter of credit because bank is accepting to pay. The importer's bank adds its endorsement to the bill of exchange. If the importer fails to pay, the bank is obligated to pay. So for the exporter, this reduces the risk of non-payment by the importer and it enhances the credibility of the bill of exchange that has been accepted by the importer. So there is a legal commitment by the bank. The avalization offers a middle ground between uncertainty of documents against acceptance and a LC which gives certainty on day one. But for an LC, the cost of LC will be during the validity of the LC plus the tenor. In an avalization, the cost payable to the bank will be only for the tenor of the draft. The avalization makes the payment dependency on the bank and not on the importer. So creditworthiness is improved. Only what you need to worry about is the political and economic risk of the importer's country. Let us look at a case study. Suppose there is a German machinery manufacturer and they are selling some equipment to a Brazilian importer under a documents against collection acceptance arrangement. The exporter, once he receives the order, prepares the goods, ships it, submits the documents to the bank. The document is sent to the importer's bank, notified to the Brazil importer. The importer accepts a 90-day draft, for example, a 90-day bill of exchange, 90 days from shipment, for example. Documents are released. On maturity date, the importer is expected to make the full payment. Now, upon acceptance by the importer's bank, the collecting bank will notify the remitting bank or the exporter's bank that the documents have been released and draft has been accepted at 90 days term, for example, euro 100,000. On due date, as and when the importer pays euro 100,000, the collecting bank will remit this money to the remitting bank. If it is not avalized, we will wait till the importer pays. If it is avalized or co-accepted, then importer's bank will pay the exporter's bank on day 90 without waiting for any action from the importer's side. So, documents against acceptance facilitates trade by providing working capital for the importer. The transaction is successful because parties are in good terms and the economic conditions in both the countries are okay. Otherwise, even if there is avalization, funds transfer may not be possible if the currency is not available, if international conversion is not workable, etc. The key takeaways are: TA works best for a risk which is in the middle of the spectrum. Open account is too risky, letters of credit are too expensive. Counterparty due diligence is the starting point for decision on documentary correction. Country risk, bank standard, industry standards, sector specific documentary requirements, all those things have to be considered. To manage the risk, avalization is an appropriate method because there should be a willingness by the importer to pay for avalization and the need for an exporter to ensure upon acceptance the bank will step in and pay. It should be supplemented by trade credit insurance to take care of political and economic risk in the importer's country. Today, the digital and technological enhancements are making it collection easier. Why or how is that? The bill of exchanges are becoming electronic. That is the main advantage, so that the transparency, the traceability, the access, everything is becoming easier. Documents against acceptance continue to be an important instrument in trade even today as a toolkit to finance working capital for the importer. It provides a balanced approach because the risk versus the cost versus the efficiency or the effectiveness of the mechanism to collect payment, that is in the middle. And by understanding these characteristics and limitations, the buyer and seller will be able to facilitate trade and manage their risks in a better fashion. Thanks for watching this video. We shall meet again soon.